Welcome, colleagues. This is unit number 39, conduct 34, titled Critical Thinking, specifically when you are looking at the themes. But generally, we want to look into what does it mean to be a critical thinker, or what does it mean to be critical in your thinking. And let me welcome the listeners. They are already here. This is our weekly series. One more to go after this one. Then we have reached the apex of our series and we are ready to jump into a very exciting season in 2025. This is Commercial Radio Worldwide, the mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. Our shows, as always, are based on our principle called the idea. We inform, entertain, develop and educate, empower and support, associate and network. That's the idea. I'm moderating the show, but at the same time co-hosting with the colleagues. On the line here in our virtual studio, George Mutenta Zamera, Franz Makulove Ramutla, Abula Mulivani, Divesh Motilal, and we will be joined hopefully by the other colleagues, Ompile, Maynard, whoever is able to join. I'm tuning in from the city of Ekurhuleni, the city of peace. I know my colleagues are joining from various cities, and of course, listeners are from all the corners of the world. And as mentioned, the topic is critical thinking, and it's very interesting. Can I start the show by an interesting example of a critical thinking, but mathematical one? If you don't get it right at the end of the show, don't worry, you can take it away as a homework. A bat and a ball cost 1 rand 10 cents. The bat costs 1 rand more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
Repeat the statement, Sam.
Is this a quiz for us, Sam, or you want to show?
We will answer it at the end of the show, and I hope listeners can also put it in the chat. But it's a critical thinking example, but the mathematical one. Not the ones where you cram the formula and then you get it. You need to think how to create your own formula. A bat and a ball, together, they cost 1 rand 10 cents. The bat alone costs 1 rand more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Let's leave it there. We'll revisit it at the end of the show. If you're listening, please try to work it out, and we'll see if this will shake our critical thinking a little bit. Okay. Let me welcome you, colleagues, and allow you to say hi to the listeners and reflect on the or look for give us your anticipation for this conversation, and then of course the 1 week to go to our Unit 40 Conduct 35. Over to you, colleagues.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our show. As usual, we are very grateful that you have joined us, an opportunity to share thoughts and ideas, and today to explore the important subject of critical thinking. I think it's such an important subject that they should teach it in schools from primary through to secondary, university, because that is what will shape our continent, let alone the globe, but our continent. Because my love and desire is for Africa to be the number one continent in the world. Okay, so my name is George Muteda Zamera. I'm the founder and CEO of Vula Unlock Consulting. I'm an executive and leadership coach, and our business focuses on coaching, training, facilitation. I'm also an author of a book called Winning the God Way, where we talk about goal setting and mastering the art of goal setting to live a fulfilled life. On the other side, I'm a speaker and current vice president of the PSASA, which is the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, Johannesburg chapter. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on Instagram. I'm looking forward to an exciting show with you tonight. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, George, and welcome. And of course, congratulations on such useful, important role as a vice president. We wish you very well with the Johannesburg chapter of the institution. Thank you so much and look forward to your input as always.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Hmm.
Let's give it to Rapula.
You know, after George, I don't know what to say. Maybe I'll just say my name is Rapula Modibani. I'm situated in Bojanala district, and the reason why I use the district is because it's got two major towns, which is Bryce and Rustenburg. And I'm managing director of the company and a founder of the Tlalifile Holding Group, which mainly focus on coaching and mentoring of SMMEs, do facilitations on the other hand, also developing strategic plannings and APPs for annual performance plans for various SOEs and government departments. And then also doing a lot of customized training for the different institutions. Beyond that, just same. I'm in the process of being accredited as a coach. I think I'm sitting on 90% of the requirements of that. So beyond that is more as how do we grow that and make sure that entrepreneurs are growing efficiently and effectively. Created with CEDA as a coach, and also a facilitator with EDP, and also assessor of EDP, and taking from that angle, a person is growing very slowly. Different other aspect, I'm also a member of Comensa, a member of Institute of Directors, and those are small little things. I'm sitting on a board of Provincial Treasury Hospital, which is the JST, and sitting in different small boards like Makabomo Trust. I don't recall some of them because it's going to be a very wider CV going beyond that and maybe selling that. And I'm looking forward to 2025 with a different energy, different aspect of it. I'm looking in terms of G20 to resuscitate South African economy, and beyond that, for the duration of the South Africa as a president or a chairperson of G20 summit. We take it from that angle, and that's how we're going to grow this economy. Thank you, Sam, and the listener.
I'm sure the Vujanala district is certainly one of the districts that will be visited by many G20 related tourists that will come to our country.
But
I'm not sure whether between tourism and platinum, what stands out.
But Sam, what is very interesting, suddenly I attended Kota of King Leruo Monotsehi of Bafokeng, Royal Bafokeng administration. On his closing remark, he mentioned the two things which I verified as accurate, that the lifespan of Impala mines is left for 10 years, and the lifespan of, there's another mine called Sibanye Steel Mines, which both of them are in platinum, is left 7 years. So the Rustenburg town, as it's known as a platinum town, it might end up sitting in the same environment as other towns other terms in the mining arenas. The fortunate part of it, Royal Bafokeng has diversified. It's no more relying on one income of the in the mining industry. It's now diversified very broadly. They've got different areas where they invested money of, which can generate income for them. So those are dilemmas of Rustenburg on its own. Mining, yes. Short term, yes, but long term, no.
Interesting. Beautiful. Thank you, Rapula, and welcome. We look forward to your contribution as always. Maguluf.
Good evening, Brasem. Good evening, colleagues, and good evening, listeners. As Brasem has indicated, Franz Makolowe Ramutla. I am the CEO of Tomako Consulting Pty Limited. We are dealing with the business of manufacturing, renting out of the mobile trailers and of different sort, including VIP toilets, including VIP kitchens, and including VIP fridges. We're also dealing with other issues that requires our manufacturing and our rental. And I am also the former president of the South African Black Social Workers Association, which was also a National Association of Social Workers. As we speak now, we are confronted with the issue of substance and drug abuse and the issue of gender-based violence. And also, as the board of the Tembisa Coordinated Welfare Organization, we are specifically addressing this issue of substance abuse and drug abuse, as well as gender-based violence. We are hosting 2.3 hectares of land, and we are hoping that by next year, we shall have established a drug rehabilitation center. Yes, I'm a member of COMETA. I had the privilege of participating at COMESA at different stages. And I also had the privilege of anchoring during the sessions where we were reviewing Brasem's book. I'm looking forward to tonight's topic, critical thinking in sourcing different themes. But as Brasem has indicated, we might be talking about critical thinking in sourcing different themes, but critical thinking can be applied in different situations. And I'm looking forward to make a contribution of my observation today when I had to think critically in deciding what part to buy for my transport. One of my transport has a problem, and I had to think and think and think. So I'm looking forward to contribute tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Makulove, and welcome as always. I hope we can help you solve your critical thinking challenge at the end of the show. Thank you. Divesh?
Good evening, Sam, and good evening, colleagues, and a very good evening to the listeners. My name is Divesh Motilal. I'm an engineer by training. Of course, critical thinking is one of the things we do formally learn within our discipline, but always willing to learn new things, always willing to engage and promote the opportunities to share knowledge and skills with others. One of the areas of interest from a project perspective that I've been involved in for the last 2 days is looking at the use of data and knowledge pathways to try and make our communities a safer environment. That is being done by the National Government of South Africa through the COCTA, where we're looking at data-driven decision making and doing analysis especially in the space of making our communities safer, with the use of data that we get from either the law enforcement agencies, but also involving the communities at large. So it's very interesting, and why I'm fascinated by the opportunity is that it could have a very positive impact for our society. In terms of accreditations, I wrote my final exam today to be a certified director at the Institute of Directors SA. So I'm hoping to add one more accolade to my resume. Thank you.
Wow. Did you say there is the Institute of Directors?
Yes, the Institute of Directors SA.
Wow. Beautiful. For which level is that? Is that the charter one, or is it the
No, just the certified director.
okay, so
The chartered one, you need to get a few more years under the belt to qualify for that acceptance.
but this is a good start, good step
Yeah.
in the right direction.
Very costly exercise. That's one of the challenges I find, that some of these opportunities requires capital, and
Yes.
that then cuts out a large portion of society, and opportunities obviously is limited to those who can afford it. And once you can afford to get to the level, you got to keep paying to stay at that level. It's one of the challenges, but hopefully with our our moves in the leadership space, we can try and make those more accessible to others in society.
Indeed, indeed. But what an important development area when it comes to directorship and all governance and compliance insights one get from such interventions. And of course, if you have the opportunity to practice, even more so.
100%.
George, I wanted
100%, Sam.
to through that.
No, I just wanted to say congratulations. Well done. That's a very positive development. Very positive. Sam, I just wanted to ask, I see here it says Facts Porcupine Podcast join the room. You know what that is?
And then there they go after you have just said. I don't know who that is, but they were not in the room, they were on the public platform.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But they
Yeah.
left. After you mentioned their name, they left.
Okay, because on mine it still says Facts Porcupine Podcast join the room.
But it's not necessarily referring to our virtual studio. They were just listening on the platform like any other person.
I suppose
That's why I didn't. That's why I didn't bother at all. But but I don't know why they go away, because we welcome anybody who's on the public platform. Yeah. But anyway, welcome, colleagues. Thank you so much for beautiful introductions. Yeah, let's get on to it. Diraj, thank you so much for actually hinting at the fact that critical thinking is the competency that is taught at your qualification, and how wonderful could be if it was taught across. We're not suggesting that's not being taught, but it doesn't sound like. What is your view there, and can you share with us and simplify it for us? And then of course, what is the business case for being critical when you're looking at choosing a topic for your program? What is the business case?
Well, thank you, Sam. I would like to say, you say make it simpler, and that's the essence of critical thinking, that you want to break things down into smaller pieces. You want to be able to take a task. So in my discipline of engineering, you're usually working with very complicated systems, and to make it more, you know, understandable, you would break them down into smaller parts. Then you would use logical reasoning, identify certain aspects about the little parts that you've broken down into. And then, of course, there's a process that you would use to analyze, evaluate, improve the kind of information that you have about those parts. So within the aspect of digital online streaming, which we are really focused in on. And of course, as we mentioned in our other modules, the skills and knowledge that we share is also applicable to other parts of your life. But for the case of digital online streaming, we have outlined the complexity that goes about when you plan your show and all the way to delivering your show, the various nuances within that value chain. And when we say critical thinking is important, we want to look at the challenges in terms of thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and look at that with a magnifying glass so that we can then focus in on those little elements.
Mm. In other ways, when we say eat the elephant in its own in chunks, we're saying don't try to understand the entire elephant. Perhaps start by understanding the ear and then understand the trunk. And then if once you have done that and analyze how those parts are interrelated, you will have actually made a very complex, big animal easy to be understood. Am I right?
Yes, indeed, Sam. And likewise, I mean, the elephant can represent a challenge that you're facing in life. It could represent a big project that you're working on. It could represent, the show that you're trying to put together, the guest that you're trying to find. So all these
Mm.
various elements can be synonymous with that elephant that you're trying to eat.
Yeah. And if we say be critical in choosing the theme that you want to hold at the show, we are actually saying look at all aspects of your offering, of your platform, of your what you are about, the principle of the idea, the journey, the do's and don'ts, the culture of the shows, the kind of listeners. So, in other words, take all those various elements, let them inform you in arriving at the type of a decision of a topic you want to choose, and then ultimately the kind of a client of the speaker or guest that you will invite. Have we simplified it even much better in the context of the digital online streaming mastering or show?
Indeed, Sam. And what I would add to what you outlined is when we also say critically think about it, it's not just about a show. It's about the series of shows that you want to have and how they will interlink with each other, how they will form into a theme that you've already thought of critically, as well as who will be the potential guests that you'll have in your shows. And it's of course, then you break it down into the latest show that you're working on. But there must always be this foresight in terms of having the follow-on shows, and there have to be something that can be tangible, something that is stable, that our guests for the shows can look forward to and have some expectation as to what you're going to deliver, Sam.
What is the difference then between critical thinking and systems thinking, Fior?
Well, there is a fundamental difference, Sam. If we talk of critical thinking, we obviously then said that we're going to evaluate something, break it down into smaller parts. But when you say systems thinking, you're really looking at the relationships and interactions within a system, of course. And as I mentioned, in engineering, we do look at critical thinking. We thought we being we are taught how to think critically, but also we also think in a systems approach, where you've got interactions between the various elements in the system. There's processes, there's different kinds of skills, different kinds of applications. So all of these live within a system environment. Critical thinking is more focused in on the smaller parts, and systems thinking is looking at the big interrelationships between the various parts within the system, Sam.
Beautiful, beautiful. I see George is eager to step in there.
Yeah, okay. Devesh mentions engineering. I would actually say engineers, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and all get trained in critical thinking. It might not stand out as a separate subject called critical thinking. But if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, you're going to have a mass of information and you're going to have to break it down into smaller parts and then analyze that, evaluate options, consider the consequences of each and every. So that is critical thinking, because it helps you analyze the information, then evaluate options and consider the consequences. So it is in fact, I would say, if people in leadership position, whether politicians, CEOs, etc., that is what you spend your day doing. You are getting masses and masses of information. Some of it true, some of it untrue, some of it a bit shady and gray. And it's really your job to look at in a structured and disciplined way. Because it involves what? Reasoning, logic, and reflection to make well-informed decisions. Because it's all about decisions and solving problems. So if we go back to our broadcasting and you're bringing in guests, the reason why you're bringing in guests, you're bringing in so that you discuss issues that are current or are attracting attention. Otherwise, no one is going to listen to your program. So there again, it's reasoning and logic. Why are we bringing in this? What impact will it have? What benefit is it going to have? That's a process of critical thinking. So it's got analysis in there. For me, I'm going to talk a little bit later about interpretation, because that's where things can go wrong.
Yeah.
Around, because with all this mass of data, we're breaking it down, we're evaluating. It's there, that interpretation. But let me leave the other gentleman to contribute. But that's a very important.
You are only don't throw away the bone. Interpretation, which is then will be the step just before now you take decision. Am I right? Because you are trying to look for the meaning of your analysis.
Yes, so you're interpreting, so you can draw conclusions based on evidence and reasoning, right? But your interpretation is subject to bias. It's subject to other. Shall I use the word noise? Depending on your experience, your background, your values, your beliefs, that color that interpretation. And so if you're CEO and this massive facts come in, your leaning and your training, your background, get in the way of it. And this critical thing requires you actually, one of the cornerstones is open-mindedness. You got to be open-minded. And what is open-minded? Bearing in mind each of us has a paradigm, which is a composite of all our values, our beliefs, our experiences, which guide us. And that's powerful. And in critical thinking, you're saying, I want to interpret fairly and objectively with an open mind, getting to the right decision, but understanding that there's a bias. So yeah, it's I don't know, you know about the ladder of inference, because I think I was going to, I would like to talk a little bit about the ladder of inference, how it impacts our interpretations.
Yeah.
Because can I just come back on that? I remember way back when we were in university, the professor always used to say, in your profession, you're going to get a mass and complex information around you. And it is your job, because your client is emotional, everybody's going haywire. You are the one who must sit down and really cut it down to pieces. And you must always remember, he had a favorite say that he said, a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on.
This is
That,
our
that,
in-law, George.
that is a statement by Mark Twain. But that is a very correct statement, because when you are confronted with all this mass of information, the lie can get to you very quick. and for you to get to the truth, now that's where the action is.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow. What gives me hope, and I hope listeners are also picking it up, is the both of you and Divesh saying that it can be taught, it can be learned, it can be practiced, and there is a way to go about it. That so that people don't feel we are discussing something impossible. It is. Am I right to say that is the? I mean, I'm looking at the definition here. Rabula, I'll give you a chance just now. And as you were talking, and it speaks exactly to what you are saying, where they're saying that it's another level of thinking. We are all able to think, but it looks like you take the intention to think at a deeper level than just thinking on the surface. Make an effort to go down and extract things that are not obvious. And as the definition says, that critical thinking is more than just thinking. It involves a deeper level of thinking that goes beyond our everyday basic thoughts. And to think critically means to question ideas and conclusions by analyzing, as you said, George, analyzing, assessing, and then reconstructing concepts. And what I like here is saying that critical thinking helps you to determine which actions are necessary to create the best solution to your problems. Critical thinker does not accept facts at face value. Instead, they analyze these facts to gain a thorough understanding of the topic at hand. So it sounds like before you can actually start practicing thinking, one should get in touch with the normal process of thinking and then unlearn the superficial way that we have always been going around things, where we don't think things through deeply before we respond. Because it's nice to respond when somebody asks you a question. How do you go about this? Instead of thinking deeper, you just go for the easy, accessible answer, George.
That's precisely the point. And one of the characteristics of a critical thinker is curiosity. This is someone who has a desire to learn and understand more than just what you're telling them. And in fact, people like that in meetings tend to irritate people, because someone comes and presents the facts. Oh, these ourselves were this and this and this in the boardroom. And he's the one who says, but let's hear more. Why did it happen that way? What was the reason for that? That's a critical thinker, because he's curious to drill into this statement that's been given. That, oh, ourselves were this, and other people will just accept it. But the critical thinker will say, let's drill down. Let's
Somebody who will say, I hear you, George, with your answer. Did you look at two more other answers before you chose this one?
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy. And you can teach that skill to kids, teach them to be critical thinkers. In any, they can be whatever they end up as in their professional lives, but you can teach them to be critical thinkers, and it will be useful whatever discipline they are going to be engaged in.
Beautiful. Rabula? Thanks, George.
Thanks, Sam. Do you know, I was listening to both Divesh and George, and I was saying to myself, I used to say I'm a critical thinker, but I'm not. I'm a student in that field. And I'm having the critical thinkers here, where they said, here's an elephant. You break the elephant into small pieces. You don't build small pieces to an elephant. So once you break that elephant into small pieces, you'll understand why this elephant is so big. But if you build an small piece, take the small piece and build an elephant, probabilities are you will build it up. It will become as an elephant on its own, but it's ideally could have broken it. So as to when you rebuild it, you rebuild it a different way or different approach. Because when we say,
And as Divesh said, that elephant could be the problem that you are grappling with. For you to try and answer the problem, try to split it into small pieces so that you can see the makeup of it.
that's where the breaking in of the elephant comes in, rather than building an elephant without breaking it. Hence I said, when I listen to both of them, he says to me, you need to start rethinking. Are you a critical thinker or are you a inquisitive mind? Because a person with inquisitive mind is more critical and sometimes irritate people by asking questions.
And I like what they're saying, that critical thinking as a skill can actually encourage individuals to be open-minded and gain better control over their own learning. So it does sound, Divesh, that, and you'll tell me if this is right, from your experience, from your education, that for you to be able to be a critical thinker, you need to reserve or even forget about what you know. That is, if you are going to be in a new environment, it's always helpful then to forget about what you know for a while so that you are open to new insights, or to reserve your judgment so that you can be receptive to new way of looking at things. And then they're saying that the thinking critically includes asking questions like, what's happening? Why is this important? Who is saying this? How do I know? What other possibilities exist? As I was saying to George, you think you have got an answer, and then the chairman says, but did you look at other options first before you want us to adopt this one? Divesh?
Sorry, I was just saying, do you know, on the other hand, you'll find the question of saying, yes, I hear you, but can you clarify further? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? What's the meaning of this? That's when
and George was saying that you might sound be very irritating to other people, but then it does say to me that if the team wants to become critical thinking team, they need to be okay with that practice, because otherwise, that's when people will walk away from your meeting.
Okay. All right. No,
So there's
thanks,
intentionality about the culture of being critical in our meetings before we commit to decisions, Divesh. I'm just using it as an example.
Yes.
And in this case, before we are agreeing on that topic that you want to come into the show with, let's check if you looked at other permutations first.
Yes, Sam, indeed, you are correct. And your premise of mindset change is important. We don't necessarily, as much as there is various um, disciplines and academic environments which does teach one about critical thinking, it doesn't happen in all the spheres of education and different careers that one might choose. One important aspect is you've got to be analytical in terms of how you think. When you want to be critical, there has to be an element of analysis. And there's definitely a different level of detail orientation that goes into the way you think. The traditional way of thinking, you would definitely benefit from rather listening and breaking down what you've heard and breaking down even your initial thoughts into smaller chunks. And like George had mentioned, it's very important to ask more questions to get as much detail as possible so that you can formulate this critical thinking approach in your mind. And I particularly like the example you opened the show with, because that's very synonymous to critical thinking. And if you just look at it at hindsight and you use your normal way of thinking, you'll come up with a different answer, as opposed to your critical thinking approach that you would employ to come with the right answer, Sam.
Mm. I wonder, George, if you, from the coaching point of view, have been exposed to the Nancy Klein's time to think theory. And then and then the next question was that was going to follow that is, did Nancy Klein, in developing this time to think theory or model, intentionally wanted to teach leaders, managers, to practice critical thinking skill before they can actually take decisions? Because she argues that many board members, when she engages with them, she finds that they rush to take decisions on a very face value basis because they are lazy or to think, or they don't have a culture of thinking critically and just sitting with the thinking and delaying the decision making and action taking.
All right, I haven't read Nancy's book, but what I can say is that coaching by itself requires an element of critical thinking. And here's why I say that. One way of developing critical thinking is practicing active listening. Now, it's one thing listening, quite another active listening. And a good coach is trained to listen actively. And listening actively means you're hearing the words, you're hearing the tone, you're watching the body movement. All that combined gives you an answer to what somebody is saying. Now, once you begin to master that, you are on your way to acquiring one of the pillars of critical thinking. Because then it leads you to adopting what I would say growth mindset, right? That's one pillar of that you need as a critical thinker. But you must, like you did as we started, it's doing those exercises. So when they teach kids on critical thinking, they teach them those, they give them those puzzles, exercises, and get them to think beyond the obvious answer, as Devesh was saying just now. So you can train people to have the skill. And when Nancy is talking about boards, so about 2-3 months ago, I made a presentation to on corporate governance in Cape Town there. And one of the aspects I presented on is you need to train your board members to think critically. They may be bright people, etc. So they may have had master's degrees and PhDs in this and that. But are they critical thinkers? That is, when the information is coming to them, are they taking it at face value? Or are they listening actively and taking time to be curious around the facts as presented?
What will you look at? Will you look at, George, to determine whether the board or any other team is thinking critically? What will you look for as evidence?
It's going back to the track record, to the history of the company. Last year, these are the things that happened. What were the big wins? Where did we face challenges? When we faced challenges, what was the challenge and how did we address it? Because
yeah, carry on.
Yeah, because when we put these facts together, critical thinkers will evaluate, right? They will analyze, they will evaluate, they will interpret, and come to inference. But they must also self-regulate on their belief, understanding that they have their own beliefs, they have their own values, they have their own biases, and therefore adjust their thinking accordingly, understanding that I may actually be biased here.
Mm.
And how would I get over my bias? That's when they ask questions. They are curious. So let me talk about the ladder of inference for a moment, because I think it's a very important point when we're talking about this. The ladder of inference is a model that explains how individuals move from observing reality to taking action based on their beliefs and assumptions. Right. So the first step of it starts with observing the reality and the facts. What are what's the facts on the ground? Then you select data. From all the data that's alive, you pick data. Then you interpret that data. And then you make assumptions and draw your conclusions.
Mm.
But you see, in making those assumptions, if George has a view that people from that region or people like this have this negative capacity, and I hold that dear, I am going to draw a conclusion influenced by the lens through which I see life.
Yes.
And therefore, in critical thinking, understanding actually that you are vulnerable to that you can color your conclusions based on your biases is a big step in critical thinking, because now you know that you must overcome that before you joyously rush to a decision.
Mm.
And therefore, understanding the critical steps of that ladder and coming to conclusion and seeking out opinions from others before you rush to make decisions.
It's so interesting that there's so many similarities in that ladder of inference model to the Kolb's learning theory. For those who know it, sorry, we're bringing things that people might not have been exposed to. I'm coming from humanities side. Divesh is coming from engineering. George is coming from legal and marketing, and so. But I think what I'm picking up is that, and then maybe we can go back to the point that Divesh was trying to address earlier on using. Is it Divesh or you, George? You're talking about the role of logic in critical thinking. Was it you, Divesh?
Yes, I think that was the analogy that you'd get when I spoke of the engineering training that I received, Sam.
Yeah.
But also back to that point as well, and you had mentioned the time to think. One of the elements that is involved in that is that of a thinking environment. And
Yes.
of course, George has actually mentioned quite a few elements. And if people are clearly look at the modules that we have already dealt with in this series of digital online streaming mastery, they will also find the similarities in terms of that thinking environment where you need to be able to pay attention. You got to give people the equal opportunities to speak. Like we've also said, the Induka, giving
Yes.
people the perception or the equal opportunities. Um, having a relaxing environment, appreciating somebody's feelings, um, listening for, different kinds of perspectives from people who are speaking, being open to those perspectives. So it's about the environment that you set in terms of being able to think. And often when you mention the boards, Sam, that environment is often not there. You often get an environment where there's pressure, you've got some stress, you've got other board members uh, being very vocal about certain things, and you often, uh, especially the directors that don't get much training in the governance space, they might even be feeling shy to actually give their opinion. They might be feeling as if If they keep asking these questions, they'll become a nuisance. But critical thinking, even in the board environment, is of utmost importance because your management is definitely giving you, some pieces of information, and you've got to take those information that they share with you and critically assess each bit of it, and then ask the relevant questions to be able to come to a more decisive, informed decision.
Mm. And I think that's where transformation comes in, because these powerful insights and models are missed when the board or the team had not taken the decision to adopt a particular principle. For instance, the Lekgotla principle, which you are quoting here, is a very good principle that actually creates a thinking environment, an environment that allows people to be given the opportunity to be heard so that they can contribute meaningfully. And also in such environment, people are able to listen actively and generatively and deeply, as George was saying, because it's only when you have listened deeply and understood fully what the person is saying and where the people are coming from that you can actually contribute meaningfully. And I guess you're right. There are many contestations there in terms of the boards because of the nature of things. But it's unfortunate, and I want to then broaden this to say, could that be the reason why sometimes certain nations fail and certain nations succeed? Because I'm sure culture go as far as becoming a culture of a society. If we are a society of shouting and not listening at each other and not holding conversations to understand, I don't think we'll get to a point where we can actually be critical thinkers. I'm generalizing, but I think when we say you need to be critical about the topic that you are going to host, we are actually also asking you to answer some of the questions I was mentioning. How relevant is this topic to the current issues the society is dealing with? How is it? Yeah, George?
I was going to say one statement that is made around critical thinking is that it's essential in both personal and professional contexts. It helps individuals to make better decisions, solve problems effectively, and think independently. Now, it starts with the individual. So critical thinking is the individual, your family, your team, your group, your country, your business. It cuts across everywhere. And that's why I was saying, when you elevate the quality of thoughts, you will invariably elevate the quality of outcomes. And that's critical because when you train these young people with critical thinking, their outputs, their contribution to society is going to be now based on they're going to be thinking before they react. And so
it must be sounding beautiful when you have applied these slow steps and you arrive at decision and everybody is happy with it and you can see the impact of your decision, George. So people must experience the impact of it for them to be prepared to invest in applying that discipline.
Yeah, and as they say, Sam, the world is really short of leaders, and what they mean is the world is short of critical thinkers.
And I'm saying here, George, the ladder of inference model you're sharing with, it's very much actually the four major steps of logical thinking. I have them here, and tell me if I'm right. My observation there. The first step is that you got to ask the right questions, which is I think we touched on that, and then organize your data, evaluate the information, and then draw conclusions. These are the four steps of logical thinking. And it looks like, without being mathematical, critical thinking has a formula. If I follow what you have said, George, and what they are saying here, and the formula is those logical steps.
With the components of it, I think Devesh spoke about the components. I could just say the components of critical thinking are self-regulation, reflecting on beliefs, but it starts with the analysis, goes into evaluation, goes into interpretation, then inference, explanation, and then self-regulation. Those are the key components of critical thinking.
Or the interpretation you spoke about, George. Before you can reach a decision, you must make sure that you interpret to get the right meaning from your analysis. And then you can say, I've done all my check. If you bring your law profession, you'll say, I've studied the case and I think it's winnable or not.
Yeah. And sometimes you really you think, okay, I've got it. But you go and you sit down with a colleague and you give them the facts, and you'll be surprised at an angle they bring in. That's so with critical thinking, you're not only just using your own ability, you're being open-minded and say, oh, okay, Devish has said this. How does it influence then my thought process? And you take it on board if you see it as adding value. And it's maturity, really, Sam. Not many people are that mature to say, okay, I'm hearing you. Yeah, but you've got a point there. Let's reevaluate based on what you say. Most people are not that mature, Sam.
So, George, I mean, if we now eat this critical thinking process into its steps, chunks, so you say that, and the Divesh also mentioned that the observation has to take place, and that needs to be followed by analysis, and then you spoke of inferences, and the interpretation or communicating your decision or your facts, and then taking decision to resolve the problem. Though, if we take those and in a simplified way, a student of critical thinking might say, teach me how to observe, teach me how to analyze things, teach me how to make inferences and interpret and come. So at the highest level of function as professionals now, we don't have time to go back to the class. How do you make the team to to become familiar with this and really become comfortable? Because this can make people want to resign from a board or a team when you bring in this lingo that sounds too scary. How do we simplify those processes of observations and analysis? And I see board members always inviting subject matter experts to come and present, and sometimes they make things even worse, not simplifying
them. Devish, you want to have a go?
Well, one of the methods, Sam, is that we could promote discussion and debate within that environment. Like you mentioned, Nancy Klein, we're talking about setting the environment that's conducive to allow the person to be a critical thinker. Not all environments allow that. And the example of boards in particular can often be very stagnant and very pressurized. So one of the areas we could do to promote critical thinking is promotion of discussion, debate within that environment. We could encourage curiosity, allow people to ask open-ended questions, have an attitude that allows for somebody to ask those questions, especially if you're talking about students and you're trying to train them. Those are aspects that can help remedy the environment in which you want to foster this critical thinking. You must encourage reflection. That's something George also mentioned, that once you ask your question, you should also self-reflect in terms of that question that you asked. How does it fit into the bigger scheme of things? How does it sound to you when you actually speak it out aloud? And that supportive environment, I think, is very important, Sam. That it must be a safe space for you to bounce your ideas off other people in the room, and by you also speaking it out aloud, self-reflecting on it, it also helps you to break it down in your own mind, Sam.
Mm.
Yeah.
I see the role of a chairperson there being critical. Excuse the part.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Can I just? This sounds like a joke, but these modern children will say to us, "Madalas, you don't even explain. You just say you're going to do this because I'm the father and I've said it." Now, in critical thinking, because I'm the father and I've said it, you must do it. It doesn't wash, right? You must be able to clearly and logically explain your thought process and conclusions. That's one cornerstone of critical thinking. And in fact, my mentor, the late Bob Proctor, used to say, if you are able to stand up in front of people or someone and clearly and logically explain your thought process and your conclusions, then you know what you're talking about, because it's clear to you and you're making it clear to the next guy. And because if I say explain it to me and you can do so, it's clearly you have spent time thinking about it. You can't clearly and logically explain something if you haven't given it time to think.
Colleagues, listeners might be wondering, but what are the benefits of? I mean, we're spending so much time on just two ways: critical thinking. What are the benefits of adopting this approach to thinking rather than just think and give what comes out of your mind? What are some of the obvious benefits of a critical thinking process, so that people can link it to some value of some sort? Because it looks like it is powerful when mastered.
I would say carry on.
Divesh?
Yes, Sam. One of the obvious ones I would say is that you can have better decision making. It enhances your problem solving skills. You can also improve your communication because you break it down into sizable chunks. You articulate each little piece as clearly as possible, so it could improve your communication. Your self reflection, as I mentioned earlier, definitely you could increase your abilities in terms of your own self reflection that you would do. And I think one of the other critical things as well is that by being critical, you enhance your own creativity, where you can see things in a different way and can possibly come up with different solutions. So I think, just by being critical, you could or could be positively contributing even to society, sir.
Yeah.
While you are still on the platform, Divesh, now for our anchors and DJs and hosts, how will it help them in terms of the choosing of topics?
Well, I mean, some of the benefits that I mentioned, like improved communication, better decision making, those are things that can definitely allow our aspiring broadcasters to develop a better quality product from the point of message that you want to convey to the listeners, from a point of selecting the best type of guests for the show. The critical thinking methodology can help them in that regard, because you manage that decision very logically, very systematically, and in sizable chunks. And that little chunk could be the one that determines whether you have a guest on your show or not. You may start off to say, he is the one, but once you do the critical thinking process, you might find out, no, it's not going to really work for the show, and it's not the best that you can offer your listeners.
And Adara Mutla, if I want to be critical of our peers out there, fellow streamers and broadcasters, are they really critical now that we have unpacked and developed the understanding of critical thinking? If you are still there, I haven't heard from you for a while. And welcome Maynard as well. Maynard, welcome. Sorry, we are overindulging here. We can't even recognize you. Sorry, my apologies. It looks like Maynard is
It's
also
fine.
not here.
Thanks, Narisam, and good evening,
Are,
colleagues.
are you enjoying the conversation?
Yes, thanks, Narisam.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm asking a
Yes,
critical question
awesome.
and I'm saying
And
that Ramuta, yes. I wanted you to reflect, having
yes,
listened for a while, whether our peers are being critical. I'm saying look at the similar shows and programs out there. Just think of the recent topics we have listened to in the context of the bigger scheme of things and the issues the country is grappling with. Are they being critical in staging themes and topics for their shows? Putting on the spot.
I think they are very critical because at the beginning, when you gave the definition of critical thinking, then as you said that critical thinking is a questioning approach to form a judgment or conclusion. So my colleagues unpacked the definition. They indicated to us that critical thinking takes place at different contexts. And they also indicated to us the process of critical thinking in order for us to unpack critical thinking. And at the end, you ask us a question, what are the benefits of critical thinking? Indeed, once you deal with critical thinking at different contexts, it is based on what is it that we want to achieve. And as George has indicated, as Divert has indicated, the benefits of critical thinking, it also include increased happiness. Because once people are thinking critically, that will provide progress. And most of them will be content about what is taking place during their engagement. Also, it will also foster team building. You know, if you are reading from the same page and your engagements, you are able to come up with a solution that is benefiting the engagements, then there will be enough team building. Earlier on, we talked about the board. I was asking myself, what are the issues that will make the board not to succeed? And I've realized that there are certain things, including the personalities of the people and the level of critical thinking. Some are strong, some are not strong, and sometimes those that are not strong become disruptive rather than enhancing critical thinking. So in a nutshell, I think my colleague here are critical thinkers and they're addressing this topic very well.
Yes. But I was wanting you also to reflect on the peers out there in the industry, because we do participate in a number of shows via radios and TV. And I wonder if it will be helpful to the bigger society, not just South Africa, globally, to always be critical about the topics that the peers bring to the platform and say, I know I'm a listener today, but I can also put myself in the shoes of this person and pretend to be a co-host. Is this the right topic to bring in the context of where the world is heading to currently? George? Will that help the quality of debates and shows? I'm just, yeah.
In an ideal world, Sam, you would want everybody to approach it that way, to be very, very critical about why are we bringing this individual to our show? What value is it going to add? What ill is it addressing? And how can we kind of come up with call to action at the end for listeners, society? How do we go forward? So in our shows, we've always talked every week about you're a brand, you're a brand, you're a brand. And one of the benefits, or two of the benefits of critical thinking are, first, it builds confidence, your own confidence, right? In your ability to reason, your ability to make decisions. You've done it often enough, people. So if it's in relation to a show, people will say, oh, that show, you always get good value out of it, but you've thought it through. But when you do it well, it improves your credibility. And that's enhancement of a brand. It can help you as an individual or your organization to make decisions, and you gain public trust. So if your program is one that people have confidence in, you gain trust. And listen, you actually, instead of you looking for guests, they will be phoning you to say, hey, because you are a brand that's trusted and well respected. So that's your goal, to be at a place. I mean, Oprah doesn't have to go for phoning people. People phone Oprah.
Yes.
And I want to be on your show. And that's where you want to target. But you want to improve your credibility first. And remember, we talked about time management last week, and that bug I have about. If your program today is at 6, tomorrow is at 6:30, the next week you haven't shown up, nobody's going to be phoning you to want to be on your program. But if it's at 6 p.m. and people know that, and it's religious, it's consistent, it's things like that that help you build your brand. And so over and above that critical thinking element that you bring in, it's the other factors that we've talked about in all our programs that you need, having goals and all that. Very important then for your show to be the go-to, as it were.
I'm a listener and I'm enjoying this, and I'm wondering whether I am a critical thinker. And I want you colleagues to tell me, what are the characteristics that I must display to claim to be a critical thinker?
Well, I think we talked about the one, Sam, that was the curiosity aspect. You really critical people, that irritating, curious person. But they are also skeptical. You know, the people who I walk into a room and I make an announcement, and they are, let's dig a bit deeper into that. That's a critical thing. And as David says, not everyone is wired that way. In fact, the majority of people will take you at face value and walk away. But you can develop that in people. You can train them to say, be a bit more skeptical about this. So when you're coaching somebody, they tell you, oh, this is this. You must, let me question a little. Let me dig a little bit deeper. Yeah. And then open mind.
Curiosity will mean is similar to being interested in why a person is talking the way they're talking, rather than rushing to critique.
Yes, yeah, that's where the curiosity comes in. So in coaching, you're really more interested in saying, why is he saying that? How does that impact them? What do they see as the value of what they are saying? So you dig a little bit deeper, and sometimes you actually find someone hasn't thought it through, and they kind of have a moment where they say, oh, I actually hadn't looked at it that way. So curiosity, that open-mindedness, and relying on that logic, that rationality aspect, logical reasoning, and relying on logical reasoning and evidence. Where is the evidence of this thing before we make a decision? You can't just walk up and so that's the engineer, David, saying, I want to see some evidence, and the lawyer said, I want to see some evidence here. But the last aspect for me is the fair-minded one. Striving to be unbiased, understanding that you can't be 100% unbiased, right? But understanding that you could stand in the way of a good decision.
Yes.
And therefore being open to hear other views. And you develop as I say, fair-mindedness. Because fairness is you can be the most intelligent person in the room with the smartest decisions, but if they're not fair, you're also going to run into a situation there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Ndadara Muta, this points George is talking to, you will agree with me, they talk a lot to the Lekgotla principles, eh?
Yes, indeed, they
Some of
do
them.
talk to the Lekgotla principles.
I know I'm biased towards the Lekgotla, George.
but Sam, take credit for something that's good. Don't hide. It is a good it is a good system, and it is something that, in fact, many people should know more about, because it brings all those things we're talking about: the curiosity, the rationality, being open-minded, and in fact, with the question, it also brings in respect, which is something that we're not actually talking about. There's an element of respecting of the individual and of the institution there.
Mm, mm. I actually claimed, Ndadara Muta will agree, will recall this. I claimed that the African Lekgotla methodology of conducting conversations and holding meetings can be grouped together with the world beaters like Nancy Klein's time to think, World Cafe methodology, Big Bang methodology, brainstorming methodology. Of course, people might say, but show us empirical evidence. Of course, they will own up. It has to be subjected to such kind of scrutiny by academics. But it's an African traditional methodology that cuts across the continent. Everybody uses it, although they might call it something else.
Yeah. Before Ramusha comes in, can I just say that you may want in the coming year to set aside an hour or so to talk about what is it, what are its principles, so that people can understand what you're talking about. Yeah, you may want to do that.
Yeah, indeed. Even though I make assumptions that is known to so many people, but obviously our international listeners, especially from outside the continent, may not really have any clue what you're talking about. Nadira Mutla, your connection is hanging, so I know you want to come through, but if you can move around a little bit, maybe you get a nice connection, because I know you've definitely have some views to share. Divesh wanted to come in while Nadira Mutla is still finding the nice spot.
Yes, Sam. Just wanted to encapsulate another benefit which was lingering in my mind. We did touch on some of it previously, but I just thought just to whet the appetite of those wanting to be more involved in critical thinking and to develop those skills. One of the real benefits is that of professional advancement, whether it's in your career. Employers do highly value critical thinking skills, and they do lead to better problem solving, decision making, and is essentially in an innovation within the workplace environment. And with regards to leadership as well, I mean, we did host a leadership show on the Kometsa digital online streaming program. um, Effective leaders definitely use critical thinking, and they use it to make strategic decisions, solve complex problems, as well as inspire their own teams. So I think it's very critical that uh, people take it seriously, that it is something that can add value to their lives. In regards the Lakotla methodology, it's always interesting to me that we do have a lot of these Western methodologies and philosophies that touch on the same aspects and teachings and opportunities that the Lekgotla methodology offers. But the Lekgotla one is way older than those methodologies. So for me, that's very interesting that there is traditional knowledge and skills which needs to be brought to the world and not just be forgotten. Unfortunately, a lot of our generations are losing this valuable insight, skills, and knowledge that we do have in our traditional environment.
Indeed. Wow. As always, time is what we don't have. The discussions can really take you into even the third hour. And Mutla, as you reflect on the point I raised, may you also be checking out for us, please. I'm looking at time.
Thank you very much, Pratham. Tonight we came to understand that critical thinking happens in different contexts. We also came to understand that critical thinking can unify the participants. And then we came to understand that critical thinking follows a well-defined process, and that critical thinking is of benefit, and that we define the characteristics of a critical thinker. And therefore, what we have done tonight is going to form part of the knowledge base that is going to be part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Datramut. You are checking out. I hope we have resolved your problem that you hinted at the beginning, that you were wanting to solve, made a decision on the kind of vehicle you want to put on the line for your business.
Oh, no, yes. I think tonight's engagements confirmed to me that I am a critical thinker, because the problem that I was confronted with required me to do some analysis, evaluation, and conclusions before I make the final decision. I think for me it is a confirmation that indeed I am a critical thinker.
Otherwise, you can revisit that decision by applying some of those critical thinking processes we shared tonight.
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I must apologize on behalf of Rapula. He did indicate to me earlier on that he was going to be joining another meeting at 20 hours. So that's why he's not here. Sorry about that. Yes, let's check out George.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much, listeners. We can go on and on about with these discussions. They're really, really stimulating, right? For me, definitely inspiring. But I think the big takeaway for anyone listening is really to improve two things. I would say your level of curiosity, question a little bit more every time, and then develop the ability to listen actively. That's huge. To listening to whether it's your children, your spouse, your colleagues at work. Don't jump in there with answers. Hear what they're trying to say. Those two, in my view, will help you on your journey of being a critical thinker.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you, Coach George. Thank you so much. And as always, lots to take away from your inputs. Indeed. Divesh?
Yes, thank you, Sam. Thank you, colleagues, for a very good show. My closing, I'll leave with unlock the power of your mind by embracing critical thinking. It's not just a skill, it's a superpower that can transform how you see the world, solve problems, and make decisions. Start questioning, analyzing, and thinking deeply today, and watch as new possibilities unfold before you. Thank you.
Beautiful indeed. And that is really how I feel, Divesh. This can be learned, it can be practiced. It is more than just a skill, it's a power. It's a power source, indeed, and it will make you feel valuable in whatever way you are contributing to the society, your sector, your community, and your family and your friends. Yeah, I was listening very attentively and collecting input as we're talking, and I want to check out with 3 points. The first one is really to reiterate some of the benefits of being a critical thinker or practicing critical thinking in your team. I have here from the colleagues, build confidence, it improves credibility, enhances your brand, it make you gain trust. Guests will be calling you because of your value add. I additionally have points here, like it increases the happiness because if you achieve good results because of the good reasons, decisions you take, you will be happy. Indeed, better decision making, improved communication, as George said, and of course, as Divesh was saying, it develops the power of persuasion. It's a powerhouse, as Divesh was saying. Fosters team building, indeed, and as Makuluvi was saying, and it enhances your credibility. George was saying that as well. And then the next takeaway from my side is as George was listing the characteristics of a critical thinker. We implied some of this, and I've just noted them. You need to be curious, be interested when people are talking and making contributions rather than wanting just to offer your own views. As a critical thinker, you need to be self-aware. So if you're the type of a person that kills other people's thinking, you might want to think about that and revisit it. Self-discipline, be tolerant to other people's input and be open-minded to learn from the other people's contribution and as a chairperson, create an environment that fosters critical thinking, very conducive environment. Be creative and be humble. And apply logical reasoning, as George said, and be fair-minded. I think that was also George's contribution. That's the takeaway. And then lastly, how you can improve your critical thinking skills. I think this was also mentioned by colleagues earlier on. George mentioned practice active listening. Ask questions. I think this is from a coaching point of view. If we want to know more about the background to issues, you ask questions, open-ended questions, always very preferred. Break down the problems, eat the elephant in small pieces. Be mindful of your emotions, and also George mentioned, be mindful of your biases. Be aware that your biases can let you down. And then, of course, lastly, think for yourself. Nobody will kill you for thinking out loud and sharing your perspectives. And you might be the contributor to creating environment that is conducive to critical thinking for your own organization and for your own team. Wow. Colleagues, this is wonderful indeed. And I'm very excited that we are looking to the next week where we will be looking at the final unit number 40. And we are going to be looking at checking out of a show. I think as much as it's important to check in a show very well, you must also check out very well. As we are checking out now, we are closing the loop rather than just abruptly ending the show. And one way of checking out is summing up, as we have all been sharing what our takeaways are. That's the way of checking out. But we will look at the module called personal productivity, because we feel that at the end, you need to reflect and say, have I been very productive as a host of a show or as the anchor of a discussion? So discover the best practices for wrapping up your show effectively and leaving your audiences eager to come back and listen to your show. That will be unit number 40. And that will be celebratory, and I'm sure we'll have a virtual toast, colleagues, next week, Tuesday, as we wrap up the show. Thank you so much, listeners. We always enjoy having you here. We know you are benefiting from these conversations. That was the unit number 39, Conduct 34, Critical Thinking in Sourcing Teams, brought to you by Commerza Radio Worldwide, The Mind, The Journey, The Destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. The show is based on the principle called the idea. We inform, entertain, develop and educate, empower and support, associate and network. That's the idea. My name is Sam Zimmer. I was moderating and co-hosting with George Mutenda Zamera, Divesh Motilal, Rabula Mulivani, Franz Makulove Ramutla, and we were joined by Maynard Maisela, who is left now. And then, of course, I could see our colleague based in France, Ompilele Bile. He was on the platform, public platform, listening. I'm sure he will share with us via WhatsApp his takeaway from the show. And then, of course, at the beginning, I gave you a mathematical critical thinking question. It states as follows: a bat and a ball together cost R1.10. The bat costs R1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? So I'm gonna give you the answer. If you didn't get it right, you may want to go back and redo the exercise. Try to apply your critical thinking a little bit, and then you will see a little bit of more critical thinking in translating or interpreting, as George was saying. The statement may lead you to coming up with a formula that help you resolve the problem. I repeat, a bat and a ball cost R1.10. The bat costs R1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? And the answer is 5 cents. I hope you got it right, and please give us feedback if you got it right. And if you get it right after reapplying your critical thinking, then you have learned from this show today. Thank you, colleagues, listeners. Goodbye. Take care. Join us next Tuesday as we celebrate by roofing this series with unit number 40, conduct number 35, checking out and personal productivity. Goodbye. Take care and be good.